Simon.
Hey, Simon.
Hello, Simon.
Hey, Simon.
What's up,
Simon.
Simon?
How you doing?
Hello. Hey, Simon. It's Skylar. How you doing?
Hello, Simon. Hello.
Hey,
Hey there.
Simon.
Hello, Simon.
This is Conversations with Storytellers, a podcast of wisdom, thoughts, and folk and fairy tales from our community, and I am your host, Simon Brooks. This is a meeting with professional storytellers. I know there are many places to be, and I'm so glad that you're here. Mary Hamilton has been telling stories for, at this point in 2025, 42 years. Definitely a seasoned professional and quite a genius, I think. Mary created a retelling of Cinderella made up of 11 different variants from 11 different countries. Total of 11, not 11 times 11. Anyway, she has written a book on Kentucky folktales through a fellowship and has won a number of awards, including the Kentucky School Media Association Award for her work in schools. She is not just a storyteller, but also a producer. We talk about hard stories and braiding stories and self-reflection. Our conversation talks about Mary's work and other storytellers, mentors, practice, and process. Right now, Mary is getting stories out of her mouth as she prepares for the Cave Run Festival in Timpanogos, where she and I are two of the many storytellers who will be performing in Leahy, Utah. Please welcome Mary Hamilton.
So here we are.
So here we are. Mary, thanks so much indeed for joining me for Conversations with Storytellers.
You are welcome.
Sorry that it went wonky. We've had to do it twice now.
It's okay.
So, first of all, let me ask you, did you grow up listening to, because you do a little bit of a mixture of both, but most of you tell folk and fairy tales, but you also do some personal narrative as well, don't you?
A little bit, yes.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So, growing up, did you listen to a lot of, were there folk stories told in your family? Oh,
Absolutely no folk tales were told, no fairy tales were told. I read them.
Okay.
I loved that part of the libraries that were available to me, so I read them extensively, but they were not told. But the people I grew up around absolutely talked in story. You know, they would tell stories all the time about things that happened, a constant narrative as they talked.
Right. So like family stories and stuff like that?
Family stories. My father tended, if any of us kids did something that could be embarrassing, Daddy would tell it.
Because that's what Dad's job is, right?
Yeah.
That's funny. So how did you get into telling folk and fairy tales? You were a librarian at first, right?
I was a children's librarian, and storytelling was considered part of my job.
Right.
And so I was telling stories, and I had one class in library school called Creative Library Programming for Children, in which we were told to tell stories. But I didn't catch on to how much better it could be and how much work I needed to do to make my work better until I was a children's librarian in Michigan. I grew up in Kentucky, but I moved to Michigan for a children's librarian's job. And the folk tellers, Barbara Freeman and Connie Reagan Blake, when they were the duo, the folk tellers, they presented at a Michigan Children's Librarians Conference. And I realized, oh, this is what storytelling could be like. And so that set me on a path to go hear other storytellers every chance I got.
Yeah.
That time, more and more opportunities were springing up in Michigan. So in a very short amount of time, after hearing the folk tellers, I think the next year at the Children's Librarians Conference, Heather Forrest was there. There was a little festival that started in Grand Haven, which is only about an hour away from Grand Rapids. And that's where I heard Michael Parent. That's where I heard Ed Stivender. I heard Diane Walkstein somewhere early on. I don't remember exactly where. I heard Jackie Torrance early on, I think maybe in Grand Haven and also over in Detroit. But I heard there was a Michigan Storytelling Festival that was happening in Flint. I heard Chuck Larkin there. That's where I heard Diane Walkstein and Catherine Wyndham, and maybe Jackie Torrance there as well. But I got to hear a number of storytellers in a fairly short amount of time, and they really made an impact. I felt like every time I listen, and still think, every time I get to listen to another storyteller, it's learning by osmosis.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a really wide swath of storytellers that tell in very, very different styles.
Right,
You know,
right.
I mean, the closest I would imagine that you got to like two styles being similar would have been Ed Stivender and Jackie Torrance. But then Ed
To
bounces
me,
around.
they're not similar at all, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I've never seen Jackie Torrance. I've only heard her tell stories.
Oh,
I missed.
she always sat on, she
Right.
never stood, she sat on a bench, and she was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. Facial expressions, vocal dynamics,
Yeah, her vocals were incredible.
really, really extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah. So did you hook up with anyone at that particular point and
Start telling with them, you mean?
well, get mentored by them? Or did you just like take all this information in and
I just took it all in. I had a colleague named Sarah McCoy who was also really interested in storytelling. So she and I would go hear a variety of storytellers, and then we worked on stories to tell. And at the library, we started offering a monthly stories for ages 8 to 88. So we had to have about an hour of stories every month. And so we just kind of made ourselves devour the 398 section and learn stories and figure out how to tell them and tell them to that audience that showed up every month.
that's
And
great.
and then by 83, there had been a second wave of budget cuts in the city. And by then I was laid off. And by then, I only had that job 4 years. But very quickly on, I began to realize that, oh my, if I could do this for a living, I would love to do this for a living. And I had asked some of those storytellers, I don't want you to tell me whether or not I have any ability, but if I do have ability, how long do you think it would take to build a business? And I got estimates of anywhere from 2 years to 6 years. So I was trying to save 6 years of living expenses. And then I was going to quit my job. But my job left me in 83. So
You
I
just
thought,
dived
okay,
in.
now it's time. All right. Yeah.
Well, good for you. So that means you've been doing it for 42 years.
That's what somebody told me last night. And I thought, oh my God, I hadn't done the math. So well over half my life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll be 73 early next month. So yeah.
Well, congratulations
over
on
half
that.
my life. Yeah.
That's wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So who do you think, I mean, seeing all these different storytellers and having access to those storytellers at that time, you know, I mean, like everybody would have been in their prime right then.
I studied with Laura Sims for several years. Laura
wow.
did a residency, and so
Right.
I came to Connecticut to the O'Neill Center and attended her residency. And the way she conducted her residencies, you chose one story and you worked on that story for the whole week or the whole 10 days, depending on the length of the residency.
Right.
So I did learn a whole lot about how to work on a story from Laura. I learned a lot about how to accepting the idea, some ideas that strongly came from Laura. It's the idea that if there's one storyteller and 10 listeners, there are 11 stories being told. And sometimes I'll be in the audience and I'll think, I think I'm listening to a storyteller who doesn't quite believe that, because they will give me so many details that nothing is left for me.
Yeah.
You know, the most I can create is an exact description of the details they've told me, because they haven't left me any space to imagine anything. You know, they have told me in great detail what every character looks like. They have given me every sensory thing, every smell, every texture, every. And I just think, do I matter? do I matter? Do I get to do anything here? Um, so that is one of the things that I feel like I learned from Laura, that it's not a problem. It's not a problem that every listener hears a different story.
Yeah.
That is one of the incredible beauties of this art form. Not a problem that a storyteller needs to grab a hold to and control and just make darn sure that everybody knows exactly how to interpret this. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Everybody's going to interpret it differently. That's actually an incredible, amazing thing, I think. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I totally agree. I had someone come up to me once at the end of a show and they told me part of the story back to me, that it was a part that they liked. And I didn't say anything, but I was like, that's nothing like what I said.
Yeah, it's not like what I said, or they'll say, "Oh, I really like the story you tell about blah 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 blah," and
Right.
I'll end up saying, "Oh, okay. Well, can you tell me more?" And then they tell me enough for me to figure out what story that was, and I'll think, "Wow, I never would have described it as the story about blah blah blah." And I just think, "Oh yes, now I know exactly what story you're talking about. Thank you so much for letting me know that you liked it."
Yeah.
And I think, well, that's interesting that it was the story about, and I don't think of it that way. The other thing that I learned from Laura that's been really helpful is, and people will ask me about this sometimes, like, do you ever feel a little nervous before a performance? And my answer is always,
Yeah.
always. But from Laura, I learned to think about that energy as energy that's shown up because it matters to me. And so my body's just going to help me do a good job by giving me that little boost of adrenaline, that little boost of extra energy. And if I embrace it and basically say, "Oh, okay, I feel you. That's good. You're here. Thank you so much. We both care. My head, my body, we all care. We're going to try to do a good job. Thanks for showing up." Then it's there to help, as opposed to trying to tell an energy to go away.
Yeah.
Go away, go away. I don't have time for this nervousness right now. Just go away, go away, just go away, go away. And then it has to come on stronger because
Yes.
it's like something in your body knows you need it. So I'm going to have to come on stronger. But that was an important thing to learn from Laura also.
Yeah. I found that out the hard way. Yeah. It is a powerful force, but if you can harness it, it's amazing. The stuff that comes out of that energy can be quite incredible.
To just accept that it's there. It's not there to harm. It's there to help.
Right, exactly. So when did you start to find, listening to all of these other storytellers and, being influenced by them, presumably, when did you start to find your own voice, or do you think you already had that from all the storytelling that you did at the libraries?
No, because when I first heard those storytellers and I was working for the library, and those storytellers, especially in the early days, I noticed they don't do this so much now, but especially in the early days, the storytellers would tell a story and they would say, "Now you go tell that story." I took them literally. Okay, they want me to go tell this story. And so I would go tell that story because they said to. And
Right.
so I thought, okay, that's what they want people to do. And so for the beginning part of my repertoire, it was a lot of stories I had heard other tellers tell, and then a few stories that I was finding on my own and figuring out how to tell.
Right.
And at first, I thought those stories I found on my own were stories that I needed to memorize because I didn't understand that storytelling does not have to be recitation.
Yeah.
And what helped me there, where I really turned the corner there, was I heard Laura tell a story, probably the woodcutter, the woodcutter and the dove, it might be what she calls it. But I heard her tell that story, and she's told what book of Korean folk tales she had found it in. And we had that book at the library. So after I heard her tell that story, I went in our library collection and I looked at the story there and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
wow. how different the way she told it from the way it was written down. And then when I learned that she was offering this residency, that was part of what compelled me to sign up. I
Yeah.
need to know what this process is because what she told was just so, the essence of the story was still there,
Yeah.
but it was not those words. It was not those words in a book
Right.
or living words. And I wanted to learn how do you do that? How do you get there?
Right. The story
And,
became its own being.
Yeah, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And another experience that I had was Ed Stivender at one of the events in Grand Haven told Jack and the Robbers. And Ed's Jack and the Robbers is still part of my repertoire. When I'm out in schools, it's part of my repertoire. Because he said, now I want all of you to go tell this story. And I thought, okay, so I'll go figure out how I'm going to tell this story. And I couldn't remember how he ended it. And I had the Jack Tales, and I read the Jack Tales, and I read the version that was in there and all that. And then he was back at Grand Haven again, maybe the very next year,
Okay.
the next year or maybe 2 years later. And I had a conversation with him, and I said, I remember, last year you told Jack and the Robbers, and you told us all to go tell it. And I just want to tell you, it's really been a lot of fun to tell it. And he said, oh, good, you tell it? I said, yeah. He said, well, we got an open mic coming up in a little bit. I want you to tell it. And I was like, really? You
Wow.
want me to tell it? He said, yeah, I'd like to hear how you tell it. And so I told it. And then that evening, I'm walking to my car, and Ed comes up and walks along beside me, and he says, I don't know if you've ever thought about doing this for your living, but I believe you could. And I was like, whoa. I mean, it's only a dream that I might be able to do it for my living. But to have somebody as accomplished as him who's listened to me tell a story and say, I
Yeah.
don't know if you've thought about it, but I believe you could.
Yeah.
That was a pivotal moment that I'll never forget. I mean, of course, but that kind of feedback. I mean, in a way, that's a form of mentoring, but it wasn't, a
Yeah.
constant relationship. I had a more constant relationship with Laura for a number of years.
Yeah. Yeah. That must have felt so good when Ed said that.
Oh, it did. It did, truly. I mean,
Yeah.
my feet hardly touched the ground the rest of the way to my car. I mean,
Then your bottom floated in the seat, right?
yeah, probably, yes. Because, I already admired his work so much.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
to
He's
have him listen to me and then have him take the time to tell me what he thought.
Ed does that for a lot of people. He's really encouraging of new storytellers. I found.
That's good.
He really does, because I mean, he came up to me and he said, I think this was at Jonesboro after the Exchange Place, which is where a lot of the storytellers that have never been on the national stage before start off. And he came up to me afterwards and said, I always give people notes on what I thought. And this was at breakfast the next day, and he sat down and went through these notes, and I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. And
Yeah.
then other people came in, and he was doing the same with them as well. And it's really nice to have that encouragement and to, almost mentoring, right? It's like, here are some
Yeah.
points you might want to think about, and it's kind of like, okay, I can absolutely think about those, and I can take on the ones that I think would work for
Right.
me, and I can
Right.
ignore
Because
the
that's
rest.
our responsibility always.
Yeah,
when
absolutely,
people
always.
give us feedback.
Yeah.
Our job and that I've appreciated the clarity of that in Doug Littman's coaching.
Yes.
Doug Littman's coaching work, and then Liz Lehrman's critical response process. The same
Okay.
idea that it's the artist who makes the decisions.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, it's like any artist, right?
Right, right.
A painter chooses the colors, right? A sculptor chooses what medium he's going to work in or she's going to work in. And the storyteller, she or he decides which words to use and what order
Choose
to
the
put them.
repertoire. You decide how you're going to tell it.
Right. Yeah.
It's your job. And, I don't mind getting feedback from people because I know it's my job to decide if I want to try it, see how it works, or if I want to ignore it. Or Doug Littman in his book on coaching talks about suggestions as gifts for the queen.
Yes.
And I love that image. Some of them, the queen always says thank you.
She does.
She knows she's going to stick over in her royal treasury and never, ever see it again. And others, she just can't wait to figure out how she might want to use that.
Right, right.
So, but that image of suggestions are gifts for a queen, and be a queen as you receive them. Just thank you. Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell the person, no way in hell am I going to do that. I don't have to tell them, even if I might know that immediately.
Yeah.
It's not, it's that the no queen would do that, or she wouldn't stay queen long.
That's true. That's a true statement. Yeah.
So that's been an important image to learn from Doug's work.
Yeah, that's a great image. I love that. Yeah. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're gifts for royalty.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part of the job of storytelling?
Telling
Yeah.
audiences. Yeah. That's my favorite part of the job. Absolutely. Is telling for listeners. And it's watching the listeners. Sometimes I think I have the best seat in the house.
Yes.
I get to watch the listeners.
I would totally agree with that.
Yeah.
It's one of my biggest joys, especially, there's that moment when you've been crafting your story and been working on your story, and you think you've got this wonderful thing, and you get to tell it for the first time, and then you realize, good, it's working, but you can also realize at the same time is like, okay, it still needs this.
Yeah, this part didn't work, and
Right.
that part was going to work this way. That's interesting. It's really the storyteller. I mean, as a storyteller, I said to people before, that I have the best seat in the house.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, because I get to watch the listeners. My father was very much a storyteller, telling just things about us. And I realized how much a storyteller Daddy really was when he came to an event where I was only telling like one story at this event, and it was Some Dog, a tall tale that I tell that combines several little traditional tall tales into one long tall tale. And afterwards, Daddy, in his conversation with me, did you see how that little kid was laughing and almost fell off his chair? Did you see? He didn't say a single word about what I had done. He talked about people in the audience that he had been watching and how they had reacted. And I thought, oh my gosh, Daddy really is a storyteller.
Yeah.
Knows where the show is. It's in the audience. He's a storyteller. No kidding. And I mean, because in my family, people are just like, well, of course you're a storyteller. Look at who raised her.
That's awesome.
Like, of course she's a storyteller.
That's a wonderful legacy that you carry there then.
Yeah, but it's not the
wonderful
legacy of the stories themselves as it is that legacy of telling, and the best part of it is watching the listeners.
Yeah.
That's the legacy.
Yeah, that's magical. I really like that. That warms the cockles of my heart. It does.
Oh, good.
So, you've been on and off the national circuit, and you work a lot in libraries and schools. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
not so much since COVID.
Sorry?
Not so much since the COVID pandemic.
Oh, okay. Is that from choice or just because there's not as much?
Just worked out that way. With COVID, I had zero, and I do mean zero interest in figuring out how to tell stories via video.
Oh, okay.
And so I just did not do it. And I was also aware that making that choice was going to have me out of the eyes of the storytelling world for however long that pandemic lasted. And I also had a strong sense immediately. I remember having a conversation with Adam Booth early in the pandemic days saying, Adam, this is going to change storytelling forever.
Oh, yeah.
And in many ways it has, because the live shows are possible again, but the virtual shows have not diminished. There's still, maybe there aren't quite as many, but they're still going and still going strong. So that virtual, and I get that there are many advantages, and I'm glad that people are willing to do them. But also, when the pandemic hit, Simon, I was also aware that I'm older. I'm already drawing Social Security. We own our house. I don't have a bunch of bills hanging over me. I got married. When I got married, my husband and I was 41, he was 45. We did not start a family. So there are no children that we need to be concerned about. And I realized that younger tellers, many of them were not going to be in that situation.
Yeah.
They were going to have to figure out how to keep that money coming in. They were going to have to do it.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel like anybody made any sort of a bad choice. So that I chose not to, please don't think I'm judging people who chose to
Yeah,
become
no.
virtual performers. I don't feel that way at all. I feel fortunate that I did not need to.
Right, right. No, I
And
totally,
then when the
I totally agree.
pandemic eased up some, I I was in a different situation. My mother had died in 2012, I think. 2012, 2014, 2012, I think. My father died in 2019, and I've subsequently inherited, I'm a part owner of the farm where I grew up with my
Oh,
three youngest brothers. There were six of us. I was the oldest. The next two wanted to be bought out, and then the younger three didn't want to sell the farm, so I went in with them owning the farm. So I have some farm income, and I use it. I have started a series at my public library called Story by Story, and once a month from March to October, I bring in a storyteller. It's a program for adults. Um, and we're in year 4, and I've already scheduled everybody for year 5.
nice.
So, people who have come over and over have heard will have heard 30 different storytellers by the end of this year. I had to repeat 2 because 2 people canceled, and Adam Booth and Sheila Arnold filled in for me. When I had hired them before, they do this joint thing once a year where they work on a social justice story based on
Oh,
a
cool.
film, and they had put that in the silent auction for NSN. And one year, and I contacted them and said, okay, if I buy this, will you come to Frankfurt? And they said, yeah, but they would need some travel money. I said, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure you'd be willing to book a date in Frankfurt if I buy it. And so I bought them to Frankfurt. And so I brought them back this year when 2 of the tellers had to cancel for health reasons.
Oh, that's great. Not the other 2 people had
30
health
different
problems, but
people.
yeah. That's great. Yeah, Adam's amazing, and Sheila is. So combined, that must be quite a powerful show.
It's really interesting. This was the premiere of the story that year.
Okay.
They choose some traditional tale every year and mess with it.
As we all do, right?
Somewhat. I mean,
So what's
somewhat.
we talked about the bit that lights your eyes up. What's the most important part of the job to you?
In some ways, it depends on what part I'm doing. I mean, if I have my producer hat on, it's
Right.
taking good care of the storytellers.
Okay.
Making sure that they have what they need, making sure that they're transported properly. It's taking care of the storytellers. I do a little bit of that for a national river and recreation area,
Okay.
South Fork. I take care of storytellers for a week for them, and they have a storyteller as their storyteller coordinator, because if a teller gets sick, I have to sub, and I will not be paid more if I have to go sub for somebody.
Oh, wow.
I take care of the storytellers. I want to make sure they don't get sick. I want to make sure they get food they're familiar with eating. I want to make sure I know about any allergy and keep it away. I do not intend to go sub for anybody, but I have to agree that I would. And so I
Right.
would have to if somebody got sick. So when I'm wearing that producer or coordinator hat, the focus is on the storyteller. Let me make this good for the storyteller. When
Right.
I'm the storyteller, it's about the audience. It's always about the audience, and that's the favorite part.
Yeah. That's
And
cool.
so these little practice sessions, it's about the people who are there. And I so appreciate that they'll let me tell stuff and even mess up in ways that I wouldn't mess up because, I've said to them, there are stories that have not been out of my mouth since 2019,
Oh,
and they
wow.
have to get out of my mouth now. I
Yeah.
have got to get them back out here because I have events coming where they have to be back out here. And so, that's why I'm doing so much practicing. I
Right.
did this spring because I was going to the ARC Festival in Ann Arbor and also
Okay.
to a pilot program in Midland, Texas. And
Oh,
so I
okay.
did a bunch of practices then to get ready for those two events. And now I'm doing more because I'm doing Adams Speak in August.
Nice.
A few other things in August that are mostly the creepy, scary, creepy type stories that
Right.
I get more opportunities to do those over the years anyway. Um, and then, as you noticed, Timpanogos and Cave Run. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I'm doing Midland in December, going back for their festival.
Have you have you ever hit like a big roadblock during a performance and been stuck? And if you have, how did you get over that?
Oh, I don't remember who taught me the little tricks for that.
Okay.
But I know them and I notice when other tellers use them, and it's a delight for me when I see it happen.
So what are
Um,
those tricks?
Tricks like, and even before that happened, blah, 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 blah. Or, and I really must tell you, like you're letting them in on a secret, but it's this detail that you were supposed to tell back there and you didn't, but they need to know it because something's coming up where they gotta know it. Um, yeah, those little,
Yeah.
I really must, without going, but I really must tell you, like, here's a little secret.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
just, even before that happened, and last night I was telling Kate Crackernuts, which is a story that I love. Do you
That's a
tell?
crazy. I don't tell. It's too crazy for me. It's
Oh, I love it. I love it. And for some reason last night when Kate went into the Green Hill with the sick prince, um, that first night she got the wand that would take the sheep's head off of her sister. And that's not what she's supposed to do the first night. But I got to the second night. The first night she's just supposed to scope it all out and notice that all night long the fairies make him dance and they don't give him any water and they don't give him any food, and no wonder he seems so exhausted that he seems ill and can't even get out of bed during the day. No wonder. But I had her get the wand, and so I get to the second night, and they didn't care, but I would have been mortified if did this at a real performance because this was my practice audience. I got to the second night and I said, well, okay, it's a fairy tale. I know there needs to be 3 nights, and darned if I can think of what she does on the second night. But anyhow, there was a second night. And then
and pretty much the same thing happened on the second night.
they just loved it, but there was a second night. And then I started on the third night and I said, well, you know what? Maybe there wasn't a third night. Maybe on the second night was when she overheard the fairy saying, the spell is almost complete, and then he'll be our dancing partner forever. Yeah, maybe that's it. And the third night was when it was complete. And so she got the yellow bird, and blah, 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 and afterwards they were saying, and I was saying, I'm sorry, I heard really screwed up Kate Crackernuts. And they said, oh, it was fun. You handled it really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it should never be that way when somebody's paying me. But
It's true.
thank
But if
goodness
it,
they were my unpaid listeners that they'd been fed a light supper, and then they listened to me for an hour. And so they didn't mind. They didn't mind, but it was like, oh my goodness.
that's funny. I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, only one time have I ever had to just stop a story and start over. And that was Jane Yolen gave me permission to tell Once a Good Man. Do you know Once a Good Man?
Not off the top of my head.
The angel comes to see the good man and he wants to see both heaven and hell.
Oh,
And
keep going.
really important that he go to hell first. And it's a variation on that story where the people in hell can't get food to their mouths, but the
Right,
people
okay.
in heaven are feeding each other. So it's essential that he go to hell first. And I'm telling this story, and before you know it, they're flying up, up, up. And I thought, I know I'm not going to be able, there's no trick I can use to pull this one back.
Yeah.
I can't, the angel's not going to suddenly take a U-turn. I mean, there's just nothing I can do.
Yeah.
And so I just stopped and I said, I'm going to start the story over. And the reason for that, I think, will make good sense when you hear it. And then I started the story
Nice.
over. And it was in a workshop kind of setting
Okay.
for maybe religion teachers, I think, or religion class volunteers or something like that. Something to do with religion.
Right.
And they were convinced. They told me, "You did that on purpose, right?" I said, "No, I didn't do that on purpose." "Really? Oh my gosh, we were sure you did that on purpose just to show us that if we totally messed up, we didn't have to have it be a disaster."
Oh,
So for them, it ended up being a wonderful little instructional moment that I just said, going to need to start over. It will make sense why when you
yeah. I mean, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have learned that the last thing you want to do when it gets out of control is to put all the attention on yourself.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Oh no, I messed up. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, I wasn't supposed to say that. Oh no, I don't know what's happening. Oh no,
I goofed up a temp. I goofed
all
up.
that attention on yourself.
Yeah. No, I goofed
Here's
up.
little tricks for when your mind.
Well, yeah. I mean, so basically it's a story that I tell where it's a variation on the three feathers, and the dragon sorcerer's wife is pouring two drinks, right, and she puts the sleeping potion into her husband's to put him asleep, but as I'm telling the story, she puts it in both of the glasses.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, well, she realized that wouldn't work, so she threw the one glass out and poured herself a fresh glass of wine after washing it up, and then carried on, right?
Good.
And the audience caught it, and they burst out laughing, and it was a good save, but it was just
Yeah,
like, oh
and
my
it's
God.
okay that they caught the save, because
Right.
you didn't panic, you didn't make them feel sorry for you, you didn't
Yeah.
turn them into worrying about you, you didn't
Yeah.
make it your job to worry about you.
Right, and that's the thing,
Yeah.
right? It's one of the things I tell when I'm teaching other people to tell stories is like you can't make, or and a lot of that comes through when you're talking about personal narrative stories, right? You have to be in control of yourself if you're telling a personal narrative story. That's really important. That's like the key thing. And that
Yes.
if you're telling a story and your emotions get caught up, then all of a sudden they're not listening to the story; they're worried about you.
They're worried about you, exactly.
Right.
They're worried about you.
Yeah, and that's
And that can happen, but if
Yeah.
it happens, if it happens, and because it can catch you unaware, it can be a story
Yeah.
that you've told many times and not got emotionally caught up in it. Elizabeth Ellis, one time, I used to work with a friend named Cynthia Changaris, and she has since died, but we did a lot of storytelling things together. We brought in a lot of tellers to do workshops, to do like full weekend kind of workshops with very small groups.
Oh, nice.
And Elizabeth Ellis was one of those. And Elizabeth talked about how, let's say you find yourself suddenly, a bit emotionally, what am I going to do? Just repeat what you just said. It's okay. Just repeat it. It's probably something that can bear repeating anyway. And just repeat it and let yourself move on.
I like that.
And so that's been real good advice. Yeah, Cynthia and I did probably, gosh, I don't know, 15, 20. I don't even remember how many. She had a little bed and breakfast on the Ohio River at one time, and we did what we called WOW weekends, which were working on our work weekends. And we could have 8 people come. And we started on Friday evening, and we had supper together, and then we explained the process we were going to use for responding to each other's work, which was a combination of Liz Lehrman's critical response process and Doug Littman's coaching process. You know, here's the steps we're going to use, and then everyone got, each of the 8 people plus us, we all got 1 hour of everyone's time to work on our work.
Wow.
And to have people listen and respond, to use the steps in the process. And we talked about we talked a little Friday night on how to use the process. And those were wonderful weekends. I worked on a lot of work during those weekends. A lot of new work came out of those weekends. And a lot of work of other people came out of those weekends too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we did those for several years. So I guess I've always had a little bit of a producer hat at the same time as a storyteller hat.
It does sound that way. It does sound that way. So how did you get into producing then? Was it just a need that you saw?
Celebrations at first, I think.
Right.
Just doing celebrations in the local area. When I first moved back to Kentucky, which was in probably 87, my mom got sick in 86. She ended up being okay, but it bothered me that I was 8.5 hours away from the farm and mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
I was traveling for work a lot with the storytelling in Michigan by then. And so I moved back to Kentucky in 87, and I met Cynthia shortly after that. And we did several things together, and she had quite a bit of money. And so we were able to hire people and had a big house, and we were able to hire people to come in and do workshops at her house. So we hired Chuck Larkin that way, and he did like a little session on telling jokes. We
Yeah.
hired Jim May that way. She was affiliated with a place called the Mary Anderson Center, or Marian Anderson, in Southern Indiana. And
Okay.
we brought Donald Davis there.
Oh, wow.
And when she got divorced and had the house on the river, we brought Pam Littman Pam McGrath and Doug Littman to the house on the river for a workshop on coaching, on how to coach, learning how to coach people with storytelling. I'm pretty sure that's where we brought Elizabeth. I can't remember who else we brought there, but we brought other people there. But then those WOW weekends kind of evolved, and people came. I mean, they came from Florida, they came from Chicago. Storytellers came to those WOW weekends to work on their work.
Wow.
And when I got married and moved to Frankfurt, here in Frankfurt, brought in Lauren Nemi for a weekend, about plot, his
Yes,
workshop
yeah.
on plot forms. I think Lauren's maybe the only person I've brought in here for actually teaching for a weekend. But then we both helped start the Kentucky Storytelling Association, and that was back in 2004. And we were both on the board of that, and I've been on and off the board. Right now, I'm the president. What is wrong with me? I don't know, but right now I'm the president. And so
The problem is like
there's
people don't
an
step up,
annual
right?
conference every year for that, and so that always involves bringing storytellers in. So
Wow.
I've been doing things that support tellers for a long time, and I'll be frank, I've never quite understood storytellers who don't go hear other storytellers. That's so inconceivable to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to Cave Run every year, whether I'm hired at Cave Run or not.
Right.
If I'm not working somewhere else that Saturday, I'm there. I'm
Yeah.
there. I'm in the audience. I'm there. Even if every single teller there is somebody I have heard before, it doesn't matter. I'm there. The only year I skipped was last year where they had to move it and they had to move it inside. The tent got damaged and all that. So I missed the people who were there last year, but I sent them the same amount of money I would have paid for tickets.
That's nice of you.
I just thought, they're going to be hurting for money because a lot of people can't come. They're going to be hurting for money. So I just sent them the money. But, I used to go to Jonesboro every year, and I don't do that so much anymore. But things that are closer to me, I'm there. I'm at the Paris Festival. Oh, I'm going to be at the Paris Storytelling Festival in 2026, by the way. That's in May. So I'll be there in May. But I go, I go. I'm in the audience. I'm listening. Yeah. And sometimes I think when you put yourself in the audience a lot, it makes the organizers not think of you as a potential storyteller because you put yourself among the listeners. But to me, that's part of how I live as a storyteller.
Well, I think it's also part of the learning process.
Well, it's part of the learning process, but it definitely in the beginning, it was very strongly part of the learning process for me. Absolutely. I still learn by listening to other storytellers, but I'm not as aware of the learning as I was in the beginning.
Right.
And some of that might be that in the beginning, I was still trying to find my own way and find my own voice and find what I wanted to do. And a lot of that I'm not searching for now.
Right.
This is what I want to do. So, if I've challenged myself with anything in really recent years, it's been, okay, so these moth stories are 5 minutes, personal, first person. I don't tell any of those, but I bet I could. Okay. And so I've made myself develop some of those.
Yeah, my cohort, TBD storytellers, they forced me into it. And I tell a couple, but most of them ended up as tall tales.
Yeah, that can happen too, yes.
Yeah. They started off as true stories, but then they just went, which I'm much more comfortable telling them.
And see, aside from having my colleague Sarah that I worked with,
right.
We supported each other in learning, and then Cynthia and I supported each other in learning.
Right.
Never had that bigger group.
Yeah.
The WOW weekends gave us additional people that supplied additional people. And I am aware that there have been some other groups like that I was just never part of that have existed for years. Who once a year they have a retreat with each other kind of thing.
Right,
and then
yeah.
Groups that have come around virtually. Isn't that what'd you call it?
TBD. The only reason we call it TBD is because we were calling ourselves TBD until we got a name. And then we decided that we waited so long, we'll just keep calling ourselves TBD.
Yeah, and that's you and Paul?
It's me, Paul, Sheila Arnold. And
Sheila, okay.
Jeff Doyle, Ingrid Nixon, Ann Rutherford, and Norm Brecky.
Yeah.
And Antonia Hosher.
And Antonia, okay.
Yeah, who's amazing. Yeah. So we
and that's virtually, right? You meet virtually.
Well, so the idea was, so Jeff and Ingrid started the group, and they reached out to a whole bunch of people in the beginning of 2020. And so Jeff and I were performing together at the Florida Storytelling Festival in January of that year. And so, he said, do you want to be part of this group? We'll meet once a year and we'll centrally and we'll work on our stories. And then when the lockdown happened, we got together to support each other. Like, what are you doing to make things work? Right.
Right.
And so we shared a lot of information, and then we were like, well, let's work on stories. And so we worked on a whole bunch of stories, and then we have all these stories now. Let's do a concert together. Okay. And then we ended up doing a concert every single month because, there was nothing else to do apart from hustle. Right. And it was, I think for the first 2 years, we did one every other month. I think we didn't do one in December for the first 2 years. And then the third year we dropped a couple of the summer months, and now we're kind of we're doing it less because things are getting back to
you guys are working out and about more. Yeah.
Right. So we can't, we don't spend the time. And also, one of the things that we found is when you do stories virtually and everybody tunes in, that's that story pretty much gone, right? You can't take it around to all these different places because everybody's heard it, right? So, when you're doing a lot of online work, which we were, it was a constant hustle to learn new stories because you'd see the same people showing up to a lot of these, so you couldn't use the same story again and again and again. So like if we're going to Cave Run, Timpanogos, Jonesboro, the Texas Festival, the Paris Festival, Florida Storytelling Festival, if all of those are live events, so the likelihood of someone at the Florida Festival, or a good number of people at the Florida Festival, are not going to go all the way to Jonesboro necessarily, or to Utah.
Right.
So we can use the same stories.
You can tell the same stories. Right.
But when you do them online and you see that the same audiences, or a good portion of the same audiences, are showing up because this is the only way they're going to get their storytelling because the live events are closed.
Oh, okay.
Then all of a sudden, you do 3 shows with the same story and you got to find some more stories because people are like, oh, I always like it when you tell that story.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of red flag.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a big eye opener, like very early on, at the end of 2020, it was like, wow, I have to learn even more stories now because I've done all these online shows and everybody's heard all these stories. So now I need even more. Right. So yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting.
Where I'm more resurrecting things that I haven't had an opportunity to tell for a long time.
Right, which is wonderful, right?
Yeah, it's great.
Because they're like, I find that stories are like old friends. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So, how do you find your stories? What do you do? I mean, you obviously listen to other storytellers.
Right, but I've also read lots of folk tales. Reading a lot of folk tales. I got a fellowship with the Southern Appalachian Archives in Berea. Adam Booth's had one of those too. And so I got to go there and listen to all the many recordings that Leonard Roberts had made of people, and he recorded a lot of children. My favorite teller was a 12-year-old girl named Margie Day. And so I learned several stories from listening to all those many recordings and making notes about them, and then deciding these were some stories that I wanted to be able to tell, and I had permission to do so. So, reading collections of folklore and then wait till a story hits me. I mean, if I read a book this thick and there's 2 stories in it that are really wonderful, that's a really good book.
Yes.
Yeah. So
for those of you who are listening and can't see what Mara's doing, she's got
it was
2-inch
every
book.
bit of 4 inches. Yeah,
Yes.
every bit of a 4-inch thick book. That if there's 2 good stories in it, that's a good.
It is. That's true.
Yeah. So reading folktale collections of various types and seeing what story I end up thinking about later. And what is there a story that's kind of calling to me, and what is that story, and then going back to it and seeing if I can find multiple versions of it here yonder in a variety of cultures, or where else might I be able to find a version, to kind of cobble together a version that I want to tell. So I find them that way. Lately, most recent story that I've worked on is a true story about just, I set it up as a ghostly story, but it is a true story about events that happened in the 1800s in the county where I grew up.
Okay, so it's not a personal narrative then, this is a
No,
historical.
it's not a personal narrative. It is a
Because you weren't around back then, were you?
No. As old as I am, I was not around back then. And my ancestors were not in the county back then either.
Oh, okay.
The ancestors with my same last name were not back in the county then either. And it involves a family with my same last name. But they're not direct line ancestors, but
That's intriguing.
it is a pretty horrific tale of an enslaved woman who killed a man and then how she was treated afterwards,
Oh,
by step by step by step.
oh my gosh, that can't be a good story.
No, I've told it at ghost tale events to raise, because I pose the question, who haunts? Who haunts and why? Who haunts? So
Yeah.
there's one more deposition I need to find related to that whole incident, and that'll reshape the story some. I'm
Okay.
involved in an organization here in town called Focus on Race Relations.
Right.
So I've also put together, and I don't really tell it much, I only tell it in specific situations, a personal experience story about subtly learning, subtly supporting racism, subtly engaging in things that didn't occur to me were racism. And then what happened that had me turn a corner majorly. And I think that can be a useful story, because I think a lot of people, a lot of white people, the scariest thing that they think anybody can say to them is, that was racist, or that's racist behavior, or you just did something racist.
Yeah.
And a lot of white people just are like, oh, no, 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 I couldn't possibly, no, 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 I've never used the N word. I couldn't possibly have had anything to do with racism. And so over the years, I've learned ways in which I did not know things. Things like calling adults by their first names, Black adults by their first names, instead of Mr. or Miss. Mr.
Okay.
And I never even thought about that until I heard Charlotte Blake Alston tell a story in which that's part of what she talked about in the story. How these
Wow.
children in a school were calling the school custodian Jim, not Mr. Jim. And that in African American culture, no child would call an adult by their first name. It would be Mr. or Miss.
See, I never knew that. That's interesting.
Well, see, and I didn't know that. And so within this story, I mentioned several storytellers who taught me things. You know, it wasn't until I heard so-and-so and heard them tell about this that I learned, and that made me think back on, oh, Marg and Sherman, they should have been at least Miss Marg and Mr. Sherman, or Mr. and Mrs. Clarkson.
Yeah.
I didn't know. So
Yeah,
it's
it's a
a
fascinating
story
subject.
that bounces back a lot to what I learned, how I learned it, and how that made me think back
Yeah.
on something that on behavior that I engaged in that I hadn't known. And it's okay to not know.
Right.
Ignorance is never bad.
Right.
Ignorance is just, you don't know.
Ignorant. Yeah,
There's
right.
nothing wrong with not knowing. It's when you know and you think, I don't care. That's
Yeah.
when there's a problem.
Yeah.
But it's okay to not know. Not knowing, it's all right to not know. And so that story, I think in some ways we do a once a month, Focus on Race Relations does a once a month event with our public library called Let's Talk About It.
Mm-hmm.
And it's people can come and talk about a topic. And so one month, I told this little story and we could talk about it. Not to really talk about my story, but
Right.
it got people talking about their own experiences
Yeah.
and how they learned that something was not appropriate after all, how they learned that something was actually racist and they had no idea. It got opportunities to talk about those kinds of things.
Yeah. It's
So I do a lot of
interesting.
different stuff. I mean, I do focus on race relations. I do a lot of stuff for Kentucky Storytelling Association. I'm involved in a new organization here called Capital Indivisible that's part of the National Indivisible.org, which is part of Mobilize, part of 50501, 5050, the people who are creating the rallies and
Right, right.
events nationwide. So I do a lot of political activism and social activism,
Good for you.
storytelling activism and storytelling. There are days when I say to my husband, well, I worked all day today and not once did I work for me. So, but that happens and I'm in a financial position where it's okay if that
Yeah.
happens. And
That's
I know
awesome.
it's a fortunate position to be in, very fortunate.
I want to go back to that hard story that you
Yeah.
were talking about, because for me, I've learned a couple of hard stories. I've learned, well, there's quite a few hard stories that I've learned, and I think are really good stories. But they're stories I very, very, very infrequently tell because of that, and I'm not sure if it's because I'm chicken,
Yeah.
or whether it's because there's so much bad stuff going on in the world. I don't feel the need to bring any more. I mean, your story's a little bit different to the ones that I know mostly. One of the stories that I tell, for example, is the story of Gellert, the faithful hound, right? And that's I'm not going to tell the story about it on the podcast, but it's a very hard story to tell, right? And it can be really upsetting and like Edgar Allan Poe's Black Cat, right? I've told that
I
story.
don't know Black Cat, but I do know Gellert, so I
Right,
don't
right,
tell
right.
it, but I know how the story goes.
Right. And so, how do you first of all choose an audience to tell that, or the story that you're working on? How are you going to choose that audience, and how are you going to be able to tell that story? What's the magic trick of?
I've only told it when I'm asked to tell haunting tales.
Okay.
I did tell some of my haunting tale stories at the Forest Storytelling Festival
Okay.
one year, and the event was not a haunting tale event. And they hadn't said don't tell any haunting tales, and the organizers did not get upset with me. But there was an audience member afterwards who talked to me and said she found it very upsetting, some of my story selections, that had she known she was coming for those kind of stories, she would have chosen not to come to the event.
Oh wow.
And I thought, okay, well, I guess I better, And so I decided that was probably a legit thing on her part. And, nobody else said that. And nobody with the Forest Festival said that I had done something. And I had been there. I think that was my second time to be at their event, maybe my third. But I had been there before, so I knew they liked my work. But that was interesting. It was when I had been working with the Leonard Roberts collection, and several of those stories are haunting type stories. They're creepy. I do a thing for our Humanities Council called Feeding Nightmares.
Oh.
Sorry, you don't come to Feeding Nightmares if these are not the kind of stories you want. Don't come. And there are some really horrible mothers in these stories where they kill their children, and there's horrific stuff happening in some stories. But if it's called Feeding Nightmares, that's what it's called. And I talk about in the humanities program, I talk about who all he collected these stories from. And he collected a lot of them from children who told him that they had heard them from their aunts or their grandmothers. In their family, people had told them these stories.
Yeah.
But the one with the enslaved woman, I have told it twice. I told it at Cave Run, and I told it at the National Festival, one of the haunting nights.
Right.
But I want to do a little bit more research. But with that one, I do tell people that it's a true story, and I will leave it to you to decide. because I set it up, honestly, really. I was telling stories around home one time where I'd grown up,
Right.
and a man came up afterwards and said, I wonder if you tell the story about the haunted house here. And I said, I know what haunted house here. And he said, oh yeah, what's that one where that slave killed her master? And I thought you might know about it because you're a Hamilton and that was a Hamilton family. And I'll say to the audience, I knew, but I knew my Hamiltons hadn't been in the county until after the Civil War. And I knew enough about the story to say, and he described the cold air. And so I described what he told me about how the air gets really cold and they go there as teenagers and there would always be cold air out in the yard and cold air when you got near this old house. And they figured it was probably haunted. So he told me all that. And he said, I thought and then I thought you might know because you're a Hamilton. And then I say to the audience, yeah, I'm a Hamilton. I knew my Hamiltons hadn't been in the county yet. And I knew enough about that story to say to them, well, who do you think haunts? And he said, well, the guy who was murdered. Who else? And I said, why not her? And he turned and walked away.
Wow.
So now I'll tell you what happened, and you can decide who would have been to haunt. And then I'll tell all the historical details.
Wow.
And there's the story haunted me for years. That I kept thinking about it, and I thought about it just in terms. There's a little song that I use in it. There will be no rest for the weary, oppressed or oppressor be. No body at rest, no spirit at rest, till all live just and free. And I used that a few times during it. And then at the National Festival, where it came from, I don't know, but there it was, to end it with, will there ever be rest in our country, so haunted by our history? Maybe bodies will rest, maybe spirits will rest, when we all live just and free. I walked away.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So it's a story for our time. It's a story... But it's history. It's history. I'm not making up anything.
Right. Apart from the song.
And it all happened.
That's-
Details after detail after detail. It all happened.
Wow.
And I was worried when I told it at Cave Run because Cave Run has hired me many times to do their ghost stories. And some years they've said, and we don't want you to tell anything you've told before.
Yeah.
And so this last time that they hired me, I thought, okay, I won't tell anything I've told before. And I told this one, and I wondered how that was going to go over. And fortunately, there were people who were there who told me that it was incredible. It was incredibly haunting. And there's a writer named Ann Shelby here in Kentucky who took time to write me afterwards. And she said, I just want you to know I was in your audience. I heard that story. And that was so much more chilling than any story I've ever heard, and so much more compelling than someone walking down a dark hallway and somebody's going to jump out at them.
Yeah.
That story was so much more chilling. And to hear that from Anne gave me the confidence that, okay, I will tell this one of my 2 nights of doing ghost stories at the National Festival too.
Oh, wow. I hope I get to hear that story at some point.
Well, it won't be told. It will not be told at Timpanogos, I will tell you that.
Okay.
It will not be told at Timpanogos.
Well, maybe you can practice it on me.
Well, I'll have to practice it on my little audiences that come here to listen to me practice.
Yeah.
But that would be the most recent big story that I've worked on.
Okay. All right.
It's been
Well,
a couple of years.
So when you find a story you want to tell, how do you learn it? What's the process that you use?
I think about it a lot. I imagine it a lot. I imagine it while I'm doing mundane things. I do a program called Athena Did What? And most of those stories, how to tell them, got developed while I was mowing the yard at our previous house. I would just go back and forth and think about the story and think about the story and picture the story and picture the story. Sometimes I will sit down and draw little pictures to see how am I remembering the story and draw a little, series of little stick figure kind of pictures. Sometimes the setting is complex. I'll draw a map. And these are all techniques that I learned from Laura.
Okay.
I will credit Laura Sims with all of those techniques. And so I just, it's rare to have a story where I've hit up on a set of words and am trying to learn those words. That tends to come a lot farther down the line, but then it does vary a little bit. One of the stories that I worked on after going to Lauren Nemi's workshop on plot, that's one where the way it's told is so different from how I tell any other story that I do have to come back, not necessarily to the words, but to you tell this part, then you tell this part, and then you tell this part, and then you tell this part, and you tell this part, and you tell this part, because there's a progression that's moving forward, but then interspersed are a different progression that's moving forward.
Oh,
It's at
okay.
a different time than this time. It's a story called Susan Contemplates Murder. I can't tell it at Timpanogos. And it begins, Susan never thought of herself as the sort of woman who would contemplate murder. So she had never expected such contemplation to come about so easily. She remembered the day she met him. A freshman in college, she walked into a room, her eyes skimming over all the young men there, and then her eyes settled on him. He had a thick head of hair, a square jaw, and he was wearing a t-shirt that exactly matched his eyes. And when his eyes met hers, both of them held the gaze. The first time she visited his dorm room was during an official dorm open house. "You look tense," he said. "Why don't I give you a back rub?" "Back rub?" "Well, yeah, they're real relaxing. Of course, you're going to need to take off your shirt." "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not going to take off my shirt. It's a back rub. I'm only going to touch your back." And he did only touch her back. When Susan first began to contemplate murder, she didn't think of acquiring a gun. She had never held one, much less fired one. Instead, she began to wonder, what might I do to a car that would cause a complete, catastrophic, and perhaps deadly failure? And she began to think about how she might increase her knowledge of auto mechanics. So do you see what's happening there?
Yeah.
And then we come back to,
Wow.
when he met her, he was the first man. When he met her sister Julie, he was the first man who did not say, "Oh, do you think your sister Julie would want to go out with me?" No, he wasn't interested in Julie. He was interested in Susan. So I keep moving their relationship along at the same time interspersing with
Yeah.
how she thinks she's going to commit murder.
Wow.
But I would never have even conceived of this without going to the National Storytelling Network conference and going to a workshop, an intensive that Lauren did there on plot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, never.
Wow.
But it's an adult story. It's very much an adult story.
Really?
Yeah, really? Yeah, it's an adult story. No way is that a kid's story.
Yeah. So going back to one of the things you said about these stories, some of the more gruesome stories that you learned were actually told by children. There's a story that I tell, which you've probably heard of. It's the Piper's Revenge. It's a Scottish story.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And when I learnt that story, there's a 5-year gap between our two kids, and my son, I think, was about 10 at the time, and my daughter was around about 5, and my son could not listen to it. It would freak him out, but my daughter was fine until she got to about the age of 10, and then all of a sudden she was like, "I can't hear this story."
Interesting.
Yeah, so I wonder
It's the one where the feet, where the person takes the, yeah.
He takes the boots. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Annie Proulx wrote a Western version of it in one of her short story books. Yeah. Yeah. So there's that's always.
I wonder what happened.
I know there's got to be some sort of cognitive growth at some point around that age where creepy stuff becomes, you understand it on a different level than you used to understand it when you were younger. I wonder if that's how kids hear these stories and they're fine with them because they don't fully understand them until they reach a certain age, and then it's like, oh.
Yeah, these kids who talked to Leonard Roberts were probably like 10 to 15, 16 or so.
Okay, yeah. That's in that upper age
None
range.
of them really sound younger than that.
Yeah. Okay. All
And
right.
he would ask their ages, none of them were younger than that.
Right.
But there was
Blows
also
it
a
out.
tradition in that area where, like once a week, like when I was back in school, we would have like spelling bees every week and things like that. But a lot of the schools that he would go to, they told stories once a week.
Oh my gosh, they should start doing that again.
Kids told stories. It was just like a little. They would just tell. They would tell stories. They would retell stories.
That's wonderful. I think they should
Be great.
start that again. I think there'd be a lot more understanding going on in the world if we started to do that in schools.
Mm-hmm.
I've been saying for a long time there should be a professional storyteller, like a qualified professional storyteller in every school district.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? That would be awesome. Well, Mary, I think I've taken up plenty of your time. And
Did you get through all your questions?
I did. Well, actually, no, there's one more question I want to ask you, which I almost forgot. Thank you for reminding me. It's a question that I ask all of my guests on this show. Maybe not the first couple of episodes. I don't know. I'll have to go back and listen to those. But anyway, final question is, what is your favorite breakfast? Where would you like to eat your favorite breakfast, and who would you like to eat your favorite breakfast with?
Like my favorite breakfast at home or my favorite breakfast when I eat out?
Whatever you choose. It's up to you.
I make oatmeal ginger scones,
Ooh.
and that's my favorite breakfast at home. But when I go out, I always order bacon.
Okay.
Never buy it, but I always order bacon. And truly, if I were going to have a meal with somebody, whether it's breakfast or whatever, I would definitely have bacon if it's breakfast. And the person I would actually really like to meet and just sit and listen to is Dolly Parton.
Oh, wow.
The
Okay.
reason for that is because of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. Are you familiar with that Imagination
yes.
Library? Yes. I admire so much that with all the success she's had, with all the wealth that she's amassed, that this literacy, childhood literacy, is a way that she's decided to give back.
Yeah.
I just think that's extraordinary, and I'd love to just listen to her talk about why that matters to her and how she's able to be super, super famous and super real at the same time. And I do think of her as real because she will absolutely say clearly, you have no idea how much money it takes to make a person look this cheap.
Yes.
She's clear about it. You have no idea how much money it takes to make a person look this cheap. So she knows that there's the persona, entertainer her, but there's the real her.
Yeah.
So I'd like to eat with the real her.
Yeah. And where would you
Not
eat
the
it?
her
Where would this be, do you think?
wherever she wanted,
All right.
wherever she wanted to go. I mean, wherever she wanted, truly, wherever she would like to go.
All
I
right.
would be
So,
happy
Dolly,
to treat her. I would be happy, I'd be happy to pay for breakfast, to to be able to sit down for breakfast with the real Dolly Parton.
So Dolly Parton, if you ever stumble across this particular
Yeah,
conversation,
there's somebody who would love to sit down to breakfast with you.
give Mary a call.
Not in your showbiz outfit, but just the
Jeans
not
and
the
a
performer
t-shirt.
you, but just the real you. Yeah, just the jeans and t-shirt you, or whatever it is you might ordinarily wear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
velour
I
tracksuit. Who
just love
knows?
to hear how she thinks.
Yeah, that would be an
I would
interesting
love to
conversation.
get a chance to hear how she thinks.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, she's written all these incredible songs.
Yes.
Aren't just songs she's made famous, but songs others have made famous. I mean, Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love You," that's Dolly Parton wrote that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing what all she's written that other performers have, done really well with, as well as all the songs that she's done really well with. But then what she's done with her money, and I don't care about Dollywood. It's the Imagination Library that I want to hear about.
Yeah. It's quite the place. Well, Mary, thank you so much indeed for doing this.
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciate it.
It's been fun. I kind of feel like I know you now, and it'll be fun to see you again at Timpanogos.
I'm very much looking forward to that. And I'll have details about that in the outro.
Okay.
Thanks again. Look after
You're very
yourself.
welcome. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
I will. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this wonderful conversation. I certainly did. And I'm so glad we had to do this twice because of technical issues, as I feel we got to know each other a little through this second attempt. Seek out Mary's work on her website at https://maryhamilton.info. Mary will be performing at the Timpanogos Storytelling Festival along with me and a bunch of other storytellers in September. See the show notes for the links to that. And she is also performing at the Cave Run Festival. The links will also be in the show notes for that particular festival as well. Thanks for being here. There are so many other places that you could be, and it means a lot that you're listening to this. To help me with this podcast, you can become a patron at Patreon by paying anything from $1 for an episode that you enjoyed or a regular monthly subscription. In return, you get extras, early releases, and other exclusive content of my work. www.patreon.com/Simon Brooks. It takes around 4 hours or more to make each episode, not including getting in touch with folks and setting it all up, and the marketing before and after. I don't have advertisers. You can also donate on my website, simonbrooksstoryteller.com. And yes, that's me, Diamond Scree, the English fella and storyteller. I'm also on Instagram, Simon M. Brooks, and I'm also on Substack, and you can join me there as well. A shout out to Chris Jed for creating and recording the music for me and my podcast. His band is called Blackpool Mecca. Once again, I hope you enjoyed the show, and be sure to check out other episodes that you might have missed. Cheers!